Language is one of, if not the most important things setting humans apart from other animals. Through our speech, we are able to share the knowledge held in our brains and transmit ideas from one individual to another. The development of writing, a system used to record spoken utterances for their later decoding and repetition, was a major step toward the development of modern civilization. It allows us to pass our knowledge along to many more individuals than previously possible, and also to pass these ideas down through time. Depending on where you live in the world and what languages you speak, the way you read and write will vary greatly, but scholars generally believe that writing originally developed in only 3 places on Earth, and only 2 of these original 3 systems still have descendant scripts in wide use today. The many different scripts in modern use were developed over centuries as these original scripts diverged and changed to fit the varying needs of the local people who were using them. If you are a native speaker of English, you probably have forgotten most of the time you spent learning to read and write in elementary school. Once the basic letters and rules are learned, improving literacy occurs mostly through being exposed to more and more advanced texts as one progresses through school. This is not the case everywhere, however. One of the most complicated systems of writing in the world today is the Japanese writing system, which native speakers of Japanese will spend all of middle and high school learning to fully read and write. Why does this process take so long, though, and how did such a complex system of writing evolve? Learn the answers with us in this video, The Complexities of Japanese Writing, the Making of Kanji. Part of what makes Japanese writing so difficult to learn is that not just 1, but 3 different scripts are used in conjunction with one another to write the language. Both hiragana and katakana are fairly simple, consisting of a limited number of syllabaries, which are similar to letters, but instead of mapping to specific sounds, they map to specific syllables. Hiragana are most often used for writing grammatical suffixes or for the inflection of verbs or adjectives, while katakana are used to write mostly foreign loanwords. We can see examples of these uses in this sentence. Watashi wa oishii steiki o tabete imasu. I am eating a delicious steak. The parts of this sentence not yet underlined are where our third script, kanji, comes into play. Kanji are used for writing nouns and the roots of verbs and adjectives, and thus are what we use to write the core meaning of most sentences. Unlike hiragana and katakana, kanji is not a phonetic script, but rather a logographic script, meaning that instead of each character mapping to a specific sound, each character maps to one or several different general meanings. Because of this, one must have memorized the specific ways in which any given character is pronounced, as the form of the character itself will tell us little or nothing about how it ought to sound. Because of these differences, even though learning all 3 scripts is necessary for an understanding of written Japanese, learning kanji is a completely different task than learning hiragana and katakana. Where there are only 46 syllabaries in either the hiragana or katakana scripts to memorize, there are literally thousands of kanji characters one needs to understand in order to read Japanese. Add to that the fact that characters can be combined in a plethora of ways to form different words, and that most characters actually have several different ways they can be pronounced depending on the context, and learning kanji can start to appear like an insurmountable task. At this point in the learning process, it's easy to either give up on the written language entirely or to resign oneself to hacking away at it for years. While it is an inescapable fact that learning the kanji will take an extreme investment of time, let's see what patterns we can find within the kanji that might help make this endeavor as painless as possible. To understand the kanji and their use in Japan, we need to first look at their Chinese origins. In the ancient Shang dynasty of China, what is known as Kol Kotsubun, or oracle bone script, was written on either animal bones or turtle shells to then be burned in pyromantic divination. This effort to seek wisdom from heaven is the earliest known example of Chinese writing. It is apparent to scholars that this script had been developing for some time, even before this point, and it would continue to evolve into the Kinbun, or bronze script, of the subsequent Zhou dynasty used for ritual engraving on cauldrons, bells, and swords. A period of civil war lasting for around 4 centuries would see the development of significant regional variety in the writing system before the Qin dynasty would finally reunify China. The new emperor Shi Huangdi would decree the standardization of the Chinese writing system the very next year in 220 BCE. This new script is known as the Tenshou, or seal script, and was the beginning of the square characters we have all come to know today. After the kanji were created within China, it still took some time for them to make their way to Japan. The use of kanji as an actual means of writing started during the 5th and 6th centuries after introduction by the Kingdom of Paikcha in southwestern Korea. Writing at this time was restricted mostly to scribe families who were usually immigrants that had learned to read and write Chinese outside of Japan, but who were now employed by government officials in Japan to keep records. The readings of characters introduced during this time period are referred to as goon, or wu sound, and they reflect the Chinese pronunciation of these words during the time when China was split into the northern and southern dynasties. Writing became much more prevalent in Japan from the 7th through the 9th centuries, and it was at this point that the majority of borrowed Chinese vocabulary entered Japanese. These vocabulary words reflect the Chinese pronunciation during the Tang dynasty and are referred to as Kan'on, or Han sound. Chinese vocabulary that uses readings from the 1,000 years following this time period, all the way through the Tokugawa shogunate, are referred to as To'on, or Tang sound. Whether any given word uses the goon, kan'on, or to'on readings will reflect when the word was imported from China to Japan. So while most words use the kan'on readings, words that were introduced earlier on, such as Buddhist religious terminology, tend to use the goon readings. Butsudan, which means Buddhist altar, is a good example of this. In words introduced later on, this kanji is pronounced futsu, like in the word futsugo, or French language. On the other hand, we can guess that the word isu would have been introduced to Japan later on, because the second character in the word uses the toon reading su. If a word using this character had been introduced earlier on, then it would most likely use the reading shi, like in the word shisoku, or sun. Any exceptions to these rules are called kanyoon, or customary readings, because they are incorrect according to the rule, but have been in wide use for so long that they are now the convention. It should be noted that these new kanji characters were not entering a void of empty language. The Japanese already had a plethora of native words for the things in their everyday lives, and so on top of the Chinese readings, which we have discussed so far, collectively known as onyomi, or sound readings, most kanji can also be read using what is called the kunyomi, or meaning reading. This occurred whenever it was decided to assign a new character to a word that already existed in the Japanese language. Because of this, many of what would be considered to be more literary words in Japanese are often expressed using combinations of characters with the Chinese onyomi, while more everyday things will use the Japanese kunyomi. This is similar to the way more literary words in English will often be of Greek or Latin origin, while more everyday words will often have a German root. Okay, so now we understand how the kanji characters came to be used in Japan, and we also understand how that led to the use of a multitude of different readings. But none of that explains why the characters have to look like this. It just all looks like a bunch of scribbles to me. Why are they so complicated? You may be surprised to learn that the kanji were actually constructed in a fairly logical manner. The way in which new characters were added may have changed over the millennia, but we can categorize almost all kanji into just 3 groups based on when and how they were constructed in ancient China. The first type of kanji are basic form kanji. Remember the oracle bone script from earlier in the video? Basic form kanji are very simplified modern versions of the pictures we started out with over 3,000 years ago. These can be divided into shoukei emoji, or pictographs when representing concrete things, and shiji-moji, or ideographs when representing abstract ideas or thoughts. But the idea is the same either way. It may take a stretch of the imagination to see the original picture in our modern-day form, but enough effort can still get us there most of the time. The second type of kanji are called kai-moji. These are compound ideographs created by combining several more basic components in order to create a story representing the new desired meaning. One example of this is the kanji for breathing, or breath, which is made of the characters for nose and heart. Any breath taken travels roughly between the nose and the heart. Another example is this one, composed of rice and ladle. Can you guess what the meaning of this kanji might be? It's actually fee, or charge, which makes a lot of sense when considering the use of rice as a major medium of exchange in the ancient world. However, relatively few kanji actually fall into the previous two categories. Over 2/3 of all official kanji in Japan are included in the final class of kanji, kei-seimoji, or phonosemantic characters. This class of character includes two distinct parts, one of which conveys the general meaning of the kanji, while the other conveys the pronunciation of the kanji. An example would be the character for stagnate, which is a combination of both a simplification of the character for water on the left, from which it gets its general meaning, and the character for sash on the right, from which it gets its reading, tai. The character for the Year of the Dragon on the Chinese zodiac can also provide us with several examples. This character's onyomi is shin. When combined with the character for woman, this character carries the general meaning of pregnant, and when combined with the character for rain or weather, means earthquake. What would you guess is the pronunciation of each of these two characters? If you guessed shin, then you'd be correct. The dragon component in both of these characters serves to tell us that the pronunciation is the same as our original character. Now that we know both the history of the kanji and why they are built in this particular way, let's see what real-world applications we can find. Let's take the word for mine, as in a mine in the ground, and see if we can't deconstruct it. The second kanji is the more basic, so let's start there. This is a basic form kanji, specifically a shoukei emoji or pictograph. This is actually a picture of a mountain and is pronounced san, or in this case zan. Now, what about the first kanji? This one is more complex, with a left part meaning metal and a right part meaning wide. Well, let's assume this is a kei-sei emoji, with one part providing the meaning and the other the sound. Remember, our original word is mine, so it would make sense for metal to provide the meaning. How is the kanji for wide pronounced? Well, I remember seeing it earlier in the word for advertisement, so I'm going to guess that it's pronounced ko, the same way it was there, and I would be right. Our full word is pronounced kozan, mine. As you can see, understanding the origin of the kanji will provide us little help if we don't yet know anything else about specific kanji themselves. More likely, it will allow us to use the knowledge we already have about other previously learned characters to attempt piecing together the meaning or pronunciation of a new or forgotten kanji. Let's look at one more example. This time we won't start with the overall meaning, but rather we'll try to figure out the meaning of this two kanji word. With our first character, we have sun or day on the left and the character for Buddhist temple on the right. A useful trend to know is that when dealing with kei-sei emoji like this one, most often it will be the right component that provides the pronunciation. Well, the Buddhist temple kanji's onyomi is ji, so let's go with that as our pronunciation for now. Our second kanji is actually a kai emoji, or compound ideograph. It depicts a gate with the sun shining through it. This inner component actually used to be the character for moon, but either way the story makes sense. The sun or moon will shine through our gate for a specific interval, which just so happens to be the meaning of this kanji, interval. The pronunciation of this second character is kan, so we're left with jikan, day or sun plus interval. Does our overall meaning of time or hour make sense to you? By using previously gained knowledge about the parts of this word's kanji, we are able to both figure out parts of its pronunciation and make sense of the overall meaning. The Japanese system of writing is a complex, multifaceted approach to the endeavor of putting our thoughts to paper, and while it will definitely take anyone many hours to understand a system that took literally millennia to form, hopefully the tools we've gone over here will help to kickstart your own learning process. Thanks for watching.